Defining design thinking. According to researchers, design thinking is a mindset and an approach to learning. The approach affirms empathy, curiosity, constructiveness, and continuous iteration. Design thinking is a process that leads to meaningful ideas and solves real-world problems. Design thinkers must have an innovator's mindset. Someone with an innovator's mindset is empathetic, observant, a problem finder, creative, a risk taker, resilient, networking, and reflective. I like this graphic because I think it's very student friendly. It includes drawings of each trait that will help a student understand what it's talking about, and it can get little kids started really early on the design thinking process, which I think is great. Design thinking in my classroom. I will use design thinking all of the time in the special ed classroom. It allows for more individualized differentiation, meaning at IEP meetings or anything like that, we can really think through the students' goals before we write the plans, and I think this will lead to more academic achievement for our students. And then it will also help with redesigning ineffective classroom procedures that are left in place due to the ease of routine. And I'm referring to an article where a special ed teacher who taught students with autism spectrum disorder used design thinking to redesign her literacy lessons, and it really helped her students get out of the same routine that they had been stuck in where they weren't learning. Additionally, students can participate with their teacher in the design thinking process. It would be a great way to increase rigor in a general education class. With the few years of experience I have a couple insights into design thinking. You definitely need to share with your team your thoughts as they come. You wouldn't write an entire IEP on your own, so don't go through an entire design thinking process on your own either. And then have patience with the process. A question I still have is how can we encourage students who have a fixed mindset to start the design thinking process? Should we ask them questions and almost like trick them into starting the process by asking those questions? Should we guide them gently? Should we leave it up to them on their own? I just wonder what the best way is. Empathy mode, my user. My user is a student that I had last year. This fall, he'll be in 8th grade. In 4th grade, he was diagnosed with an emotional disability. He was moved to a full resource room. He has been in a full resource room since. He's occasionally gone back to general ed, but usually is moved back to the resource room within a few weeks. He lacks social skills and struggles to socialize appropriately with peers. I would describe him as rambunctious, needy, respectable, and considerate. I highlighted traits that can be seen as positive and negative because I want to highlight that even negative traits can be turned positive. The student always is looking for attention, but this can be a great thing. He can be really helpful in the classroom. He really just needs patience from his teachers. When we asked the student what is important to him through this process, he said that he still wants to be able to talk to his friends. He wants to play sports. He wants to feel like staff like him, because he feels like right now staff dislike him and they have an opinion on him that can't be changed, and he feels embarrassed to be seen by other students in a special ed setting. Here's my empathy map on the left. Some additional insights I had in this activity were that the student likely feels isolated because he's been with those friends since general ed, since like kindergarten, because I know them as well from my general ed internships, and so I know it's hard for him to be away from them. He feels unfairly punished. He doesn't always see where he went wrong, and he feels like taking away more privileges will be harmful, and I agree with him. I think that taking away more privileges will not extinguish the behaviors. Here is the map that we came up with for our original problem statement, where we had the student avoid problem areas so that he could still socialize with his friends, but in an appropriate way. Our original problem statement was that the student needs a better way to walk to class because he wants to socialize with friends, but he needs to avoid areas around campus that may cause him issues. This problem statement is too specific, it only solves a minor issue, and it does not challenge the student. We updated our problem statement after Module 1 to the student needs tools to help him remember appropriate ways to socialize because socialization is an important life skill. This is open for interpretation. It can be continued after the school year, and it challenges the student. How does this relate to the student? This activity helped us understand the student by highlighting what is important to him, giving us more insight into how much the student believes in himself, which is not a lot at all, giving us background on his issues with authority. He has extensive authority issues with men, which is something to consider when we have him interact with staff. Helping us look at the big picture rather than something small, keeping the end goal in mind, helped us go through this process with clear sights, and we knew what we needed to find out from the student to create our prototype. The student's disability became an obstacle when we were trying to write a goal that would be fair to him and all other parties. We realized that there are staff members that the student is not allowed contact with because of past incidents, so that's something to consider as well. We were surprised when the student wanted to be involved in the process and when we came up with a successful prototype. Again, here's my problem statement and the 5 sample prototypes that we were thinking of creating. We thought of doing zones of regulation posters in general ed classrooms, individualized zones of regulation cards, data tracking sheets on the student's desk, clip on the finger, and acting skits with the class. The zones of regulation posters are not individualized enough. We ended up deciding on the zones of regulation cards, but I'll come back to this one. The data tracking sheet on the desk is not discrete at all, and other students could read it, which would be harmful to our student. A clip on the finger serves as a reminder and doesn't really give the student any tools. And then acting skits in the class. This could be a helpful tool, but I do not think it would be helpful based on the group of students that we have. So our successful idea for the prototype was the individualized zones of regulation cards. I considered it a success when my mentor teacher and I both immediately agreed. We saved a lot of time by doing that because we've definitely butted heads before on ideas like that. Some challenges that we faced was not having our user physically present and trying to find ideas that would work with more than just a handful of kids. My mentor's main concern was that we would set the student off by pushing him too hard, but after consulting with the student's mother, we decided that the zones of regulation cards would be good for him. Here's our prototype. You can see that it includes examples for how to get out of each zone that could be negative, and it also gives visuals. Successes in our prototype. Our finished prototype has potential to be helpful for all students, not just students with emotional disabilities. With some additions, we could use it next year. We really connected with our students. When kids see you trying to help them, it really builds their trust, and this was an example of that. This tool can be easily paired with tools from the same curriculum, zones of regulation, or tools from a different social emotional curriculum. The design allowed us to honor the student's request for the prototype to be discrete. Some challenges we faced was getting tunnel vision and forgetting the end goal with the design thinking process, and not having the student physically there was difficult because it was hard to gauge how he truly felt about each of our ideas. For the purposes of this assignment, I would say that it was a successful solution. Ultimately, we can't solve all of our students' social issues. That's really up to him and his own growth, but we gave him tools that will help him solve issues that are contributing to the overall issues, so I consider it successful. I learned that it's okay to start over. I relearned that students can be very stubborn, and the design thinking process is best done when you have your end goal in mind and you reflect on the previous steps as you go. Key points from my test mode. A challenge I faced was that I realized there were only redirects on our cards and nothing encouraging. We really need to add a green zone before we would use this. Some feedback we received from the student was that he liked that it was discreet, he liked that he had the option to take breaks, and he didn't think that putting his head down would be effective. I agree with him. Reflecting on it, I don't think putting his head down would be effective. That is not an effective tool for that student. A key insight I had was that once we took a step back and looked at the big picture, we were able to think of our prototype. Empathy is essential in this process. If we hadn't had empathy, the student wouldn't work with us. Collaboration is important. You need to collaborate with your team effectively in order to complete this process effectively. And a surprise that I faced was that I was surprised how natural the steps felt after we really got started. Here's a sample of what our green zone would look like. I just pulled this from a Zones of Regulation website. Once the student is in the green, they may not know how to stay there. The card was discouraging as it was because it didn't give any suggestions for the green zone. Positive self-talk, taking a break, listening to music are all great ways for students to stay on track. So I really liked this example. My reflections. Application in my professional life. This is a new approach to helping students meet their goal and the innovator's mindset. I will be teaching myself and my students those 8 traits for probably the rest of my career. Applications in my personal life. Design thinking is a great way to solve minor problems that feel like major problems. As a college student living on my own for the first time, I need a way to solve my minor problems that at the time feel like major problems. So this was a great thing to learn. Challenges and successes. Some of the challenges I faced were shifting my thinking from trial and error to an actual well thought out process. Successes I faced was discovering design thinking and how it leads to a better solution. And then I feel like this entire process of doing this project and going through the modules helped me learn design thinking through and through. I think it's really important in special education to have design thinking under your belt, and I believe it could be utilized even more than it is currently, and I plan to utilize it in my classroom. If I were to do design thinking over again, I would make it a point to keep my end goal in mind from the very beginning. After each step, I think that we should reflect on the previous step and make note of where we are trying to go. I would involve my user in more than just a few steps. It was really difficult because he's one of our students. We were able to get in touch with him because my mentor teacher has a close relationship with his mom. But in a normal case, this would have been really difficult because of everything going on with the coronavirus and because it is summer. I was just lucky in this situation. In the future, I would like to have more involvement with my students if I'm trying to solve an issue like this with them. And the innovator's mindset. Again, on the side, we have the 8 traits: empathetic, problem finder, risk taker, networking, observant, creative, resilient, and reflective. My final thoughts are that adopting an innovator's mindset was overall a great experience. My greatest success was learning so much that I can apply directly to my future classrooms. It was challenging to practice all 8 traits throughout the process, but although it was challenging, I believed I successfully practiced the design thinking process with an innovator's mindset, and I finished with a great prototype. I think my mentor teacher would agree with me. My user was satisfied with the end result, and overall I think that this project and learning process was very beneficial. Here are my resources that I used to create this presentation, and thank you so much for listening.